Good day, everybody. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're doing another What's This Then? And today we're having a look at a game called Esoteric Ebb. Now, Esoteric Ebb is, I believe, the first of the Disco Elysium likes that I've seen. I understand that whenever Zaun kind of imploded a little bit, a lot of the people who originally worked on Disco Elysium kind of went off to make their own version, or like their own spin on Disco Elysium. And from what I understand, the only one of those that we've heard about is Zero Parades for Dead Spies, which is the one that's being made by the now current team at Zaun. But Esoteric Ebb is not one of those splinters of the original Disco Elysium. This is a game that is just heavily inspired by it. And honestly, I'm surprised it took this long for us to get something like this, to be honest. That I'm aware of, anyway. But this is certainly, like, the first big one. You know, first one that it seems like, you know, was selling, it sold well. It was on high up on the Steam trending page and stuff like that. You know, people knew about this one. There was a good demo for it, that sort of stuff. Next Fest, you know, got some good eyes on it. And in terms of where does this one lie in terms of inspiration versus, like, directly just taking what Disco Elysium did and just doing it again, this one is definitely Disco Elysium inspired, but in a D&D world. You will see stuff in this game that is just, oh, that's from Disco Elysium, oh, that's from Disco Elysium. But I think it does just enough to twist those and adds enough to that formula to make it stand out on its own and have this be its own experience. Now, do I think this game, from what time I've played of it, is going to be as good as Disco Elysium? That's tough, because Disco Elysium, I think, is like one of the best written games of all time. I don't think it's probably going to match up to what Disco Elysium did, but Disco Elysium is like the definition of lightning in a bottle, like good luck ever trying to do that again. But I think this game does damn well at doing its own thing with the Disco Elysium formula. So I think there's plenty to like here. Plenty to like here. Beyond just, you know, coming into it with the expectation of, I'm going to play a Disco Elysium again. For example, the world here is totally, it's like a homebrew D&D world made by the dev, Christopher Beauregard. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I know there's an accent on one of those letters. I hope that doesn't change the pronunciation. But yeah, homebrew world and small development studio. Well, I don't really know so much of it as a development studio as much as Christopher Beauregard kind of set out to do this himself, and then obviously hired people when needs must, sort of thing. I don't really know what the reality is there. I think this is his first game, so it's quite an outing. It's quite an outing for a first game, to be sure. But so far I've had a really good time with it. I've put about, like I said, I put about 10 hours or so into it, although I'll be honest, there was a decent amount of that was set in the character creation screen. This game may have one of the most difficult, for me personally, to choose character creator screens I've ever seen. In a good way, not because it's like bad, but because it's like all of it I want to do. Like I could see very easily multiple playthroughs of this game with different builds. Absolutely, 100%. First, before we jump into that, let's always hop into the options menu, as we are one to do around here. So, very basic options menu. This is basically everything here. So you've got some nice stuff to do with dialogue, like font size, and the font itself you can even change, which is quite nice, just if you don't like the default one. But it does say that this is the one that is sort of recommended to be played in. You can change the UI size, colorblind mode, where it will actually put just the word, as you can see here, like this text is in green. That correlates to some of the skills. So wisdom is green, for example. So it'll put the word green, or put the word wisdom next to it, just so you know which one's which. Visuals, there's not a ton to change here. It's just a high or low setting. And it just changes shadows and stuff. This is a heavily stylized game. You're not going to be needing to tweak, like, you know, texture quality and ambient occlusion and all that sort of stuff, so you don't need to worry about that here. Game seems to run like an absolute dream, although it does seem to have a bit of weirdness going on with borderless. I've tried it with VSync 120 and just normal 120, where just sometimes if you're playing in borderless, the frame rate just sort of drops to about 90 and seems to sit there, like, it seems to be a bit of weirdness going on. It doesn't seem to be like a performance thing, it just seems to be a bug, as far as I can tell. It doesn't happen in full screen, but then alt-tabbing is a real pain, so I just keep it in borderless. But yeah, it supports 4K, borderless, you can do windowed if you wish, refresh rates, you know, unlimited up to 120, cap it to 30 if you really want to, and then audio, you've got all the necessary audio sliders that you would need. So pretty good options menu. Don't need a ton of stuff, but it's nice that what's there is there. And like I said, the only thing I've really encountered is this borderless weirdness with the frame rate just suddenly dropping to like 90. Now, before we get into a game, I'll show you the character creator screen here. So if you're familiar with D&D, this will look very familiar to you. And also, if you're familiar with Disco Elysium, you can imagine how these would graft onto that existing system. Because you have like your strength and dex, which is much like your physique and motorics from Disco Elysium and stuff. You know, your intelligence and your wisdom and charisma, which is like your intellect and your psyche and stuff like that. Constitution. Obviously in Disco Elysium, you're only dealing with 4 different sort of categories of skills, so it's been spread out a little bit more. So like Constitution, kind of its own thing with a few different extra things in here. You can click up in this little card on the left and it will give you a bit of lore about like generally how it's perceived, you know, how is strength perceived in this world. Uses, it'll tell you a little bit about what it's for. So higher strength allows you to equip extra items, because that is a thing you're going to be doing in this game. There is actual like combat in this game, as opposed to where Disco Elysium had no combat. It was all text, pretty much. This game does have combat. Now it is still text, but it is a Disco Elysium take on what combat would look like, and I think it works really, really well. I've only done it now the one time. As far as I can tell, there's not a ton of combat. It's definitely not the focus of this game, but as the game goes on, as it goes on later, as always, this is a first impression, so that could absolutely change later. But initially, I've only done one bit of combat, and that was just with another side save I did just to quickly test the combat. Because I seen there was a situation I could have done combat, I didn't in my main save, and I wanted to see how the combat worked, so I did that in a second save. Just so you know. But yeah, so you can, if you're familiar with D&D, you can put points in. Up at the top here, this is your total allotment of points that you can put in, and then you also have a background which gives you some extra points to work with in very specific skills. So if you don't have any of these extra background point focused or extra background focused points put into anything, the highest you can put it is 15, and then, you know, until you run out of points to allot, so you can just, like, you know, spread them out however you wish. If you want to have a very physical focused cleric, because you play as a cleric in this game. So you can have a very physical focused one, or you could go with a more like mentally focused one, or you could do like a mismatch. And this is where it became really hard for me to do the character creator stuff, because my first character didn't take me too long, but once I started seeing how the skills worked, I really liked all of them. And I was struggling with, like, okay, I want the character with a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this, you know, but also I want to be really good at one thing, you know. I got into that, like, I want to be really good at, like, one thing, because that's just how I like to play RPGs. I like to go all in on, like, a stat and just be, like, the best at that stat. But at the same time, in this game, I didn't find many of these that I liked to have as, like, dump stats, where it was like, okay, Dex, you know, we'll just chuck that down at 6 and then we'll get some extra points. Because the situations I've run into where Dex has been useful have been really fun and enjoyable. But it does also work, like, both ways as well, where having a low one still impacts your game. It's not like it's gone. Like intelligence, for example, is probably the best example I have of it so far, which is if you have a high intelligence, your character is genuinely really smart and knows their stuff, but their ego is also through the roof. Like, your intelligence is constantly chiming in, telling you, like, why are you even bothering to explain this? Like, you're just so much smarter than this person. Like, why are you even bothering? You know, all this sort of stuff. But if you have intelligence, like, so low, then it's like your intelligence still chimes in, but now it's just really stupid. You know, it still wants to, like, do those chimes in of like, you know, oh, I know this, but it's now just stupid, you know, and sometimes those dialogue options can be really funny. I would say that's one thing that this game does. It has a lot more of a light-hearted tone than Disco Elysium does. It feels just a bit more funny, a bit more tongue-in-cheek. Like I said, that could change as I go on, but so far it seems to be mostly very like light-hearted, you know, we're along for the ride, a very, very D&D, you know, you're sitting at the table with everyone, D&D adventure. You're just having a good time. Nothing too serious so far. So yeah, you can put all your points in, you can also put proficiencies in. Now proficiencies, they give you a +2 modifier to whatever stat you put it in, so if it has 0, you put a proficiency in, it now has +2, plus then whatever you can up that to. But what it also does is adds your class, your cleric level, to your rolls as well if you're proficient in it. So if I had 10 here and I have +2 because I'm proficient, but I'm also a level 2 cleric, then I actually get +4. So you can really like double down on a stat, make that stat like really, really good. Or you can use proficiencies to make a stat like sort of default, you know, like plus, instead of being a -2, it's a +0. And then as you level up, that actually starts, you know, getting +1, +2, plus whatever. So it's quite nice if you really want to focus on something. And the backgrounds, there's quite a lot of them. And they have varying degrees of like different stat distributions. Some of them you can find where it's just a +3 in one specific stat, like +3 strength here. If you really want to make a big strength cleric and go all the way up to 18, that sort of thing. Which may help you in combat, but also makes your character like... Well, it says here increases like manhood, you know, stuff like that. Like your character, you can come in here actually into role, and you can start saying like a high strength cleric uses brute force, punches the big bad guys, loves quests, that sort of stuff. But it can also get a bit like overbearing, especially if you meet someone that doesn't necessarily have a high strength, and maybe they like to think things through, and your high strength will then be like constantly telling you like how weak they are and all this sort of stuff, and it influences obviously like how you can see people and stuff, which is supposed to be, you know, the point, which is a good system like this for sure. You can also hit randomize if you just want to really just chuck it out to the wind what you get, and there's also pre-builds if you are having a hard time. For me, like I said, the struggle for me was just I like all these stats so much, and I want them to all, but at the same time I'm struggling with the part of me that likes to play RPGs where I focus on like 1 or 2 stats. So it's just hard to, it's just tough. But it's the replayability of this game would be absolutely immense, because I've gone through the very, very beginning of the game with 2 very different characters, and I've ended up actually going in 2 different like directions. You know, like I'm actually doing stuff I have not seen. Not just that I'm doing stuff that I have seen, but in a different way. I'm actively going somewhere I have not seen before, which is cool. Now, I'm going to load into a save I made for the video here, where I've just done an even distribution. This sort of game, normally I don't like to show spoilers in these What's This Ends and these first impressions, but with a game like this, if you've played Disco Elysium, or if you're familiar with it, pretty much everything is a spoiler. This game is nothing but the experiences that the game provides in terms of like story, interactions, stuff like that. I will not be able to show you anything in this game without it being in some way a direct spoiler for something. So keep that in mind. This will be literally the very beginning, except after like the little intro bit. So yeah, this will be right there. I will be skipping most of the dialogue, clicking through it, just so I can show you vaguely just how the game works and stuff like that. I will show you a bit of combat, and you'll see how all that works, essentially. This will probably be the shortest gameplay section that I've ever done for a What's This Then, because I really don't want to show too much of it off, but there's not like a ton to show off either. There is differences, you'll see, I'll show you them now, but this is sort of where we start. I'm not going to say why we're here, how we're here, what we need to do, but this is where the game starts. You can move around, left click. You can also use WAS and D to move around, which is quite nice. You can hold shift to run. So point and click people, or if you don't like point and click where to go, you can use that. Also works with controller. Now, slight issue with controller is that the buttons can be a little bit obtuse as to how they actually work, but for the most part, it does work pretty well. So yeah, here we are. you can, like I said, walk around. You can also hold tab, or you can hold right click, and it will show all the highlightable things that you can interact with. So say there's an apple here, we can click on it, and we usually get 3 options to do with most things. You can behold it, and it will tell you what it is. You can engage with it, which will start a conversation. Obviously, it's an apple. I can't start a conversation with an apple. But sometimes you might be able to start a conversation with like inanimate objects because your thoughts kick in. And then you can also trifle, which is basically just to pick up. Or if you do trifle on a person, it might be trying to pickpocket them, for example. So that's a good time to show the stuff on the left here. So, questing tree. This is basically your quest log. It acts as like a star constellation thing. You don't really get like a, here's your current quest. You just get things that your character has learned about and how they connect to each other and whether you've done them or not. Or whether they've been sufficiently completed or not. So, it's pretty cool. I really like this way of laying it out. The game also really wants to emphasize that do quests in whatever order you want. There's no handrails here. There's no funnel to where you should and shouldn't be going. It's literally just get out there, have a D&D adventure, and have fun sort of thing, which I really appreciate. Then you also have your inventory, which will show your stat spreads out on the right here. It'll show your items in the middle, and on the left it'll give you a description of what they do. And then, or sort of above the items in the middle here, you'll have like your equipables. So we've got a helmet equipped right now, and we've got nothing else. So higher strength and stuff like that would give me more or less of these items that I can equip, and they're all down here. You also have a deep storage, which is your bag of holding, essentially. As a city cleric, you are you're given a bag of holding, as just by default, which is pretty nice. One weird thing about it, though, is you can put stuff into the deep storage, but to get stuff out of it, you have to click it, and then it will dump everything that's in deep storage into your item thing here. I don't know why it does that instead of just opening up a separate item thing that then I can drag and drop from. There might be a reason for that later, I don't know, but it just seems a bit strange. As you can see on the right here, we have hit points. That's determined by your constitution. We're a bit hurt right now, so what we can do is we can click on the apple, gives you a description about the apple, tells you what it does, hit consume, job done, apple eaten. Then we can swap on over to the journal here, which is a map. Now, this is not the complete map. This is just a very vague outline of the current area, so don't worry too much. That has shown you a very, very small amount of the map. And then you have a spell book, which this is one of the most interesting parts about this being a D&D inspired Disco Elysium-like game. Us being a cleric, we can obviously cast spells. Now, the amount of spells you can cast, or you can prepare, is tied to your intelligence. And then the spell difficulty, so when you cast it at someone, how difficult it is for them to resist it is based on either your wisdom or your intelligence, whichever is higher. So it's a pretty nice little system. You can cast spells in combat, outside of combat. Basically, it's all contextual. So Cure Wounds, you can only cast that if you're hurt or if someone's hurt. There's like, Speak to Animals. There's, stuff like that. There's a ton of spells. I've already discovered like maybe 10 different spells, and I barely got like my second spell slot at level 2, So you have to prepare them. I've got none prepared right now, so they don't appear. But essentially, once we come out of this screen, in the bottom left, these 3 little dots down here, they are how many spell slots we have. So I have 3 first level spell slots, and then to the right of that, the empty space here where my mouse is, this is where the spells would be if I had them prepared. So once I do that, then I can click them in the various different situations, and then I can cast a spell. Depending on what it is, and depending on what I targeted on, and all that sort of stuff. Now, a good way to show off what combat and dialogue is going to be like is this zombie here. So like I said, I can behold. This guy looks indecisive. I can trifle, so I can pickpocket. Requires a dexterity check, and then you can engage. So I'm mostly just going to be clicking through most of this. So you can just I'll just stare at him, and it's just like Disco Elysium. Your different stats will poke in. So during that little bit of conversation, there was an intelligence check which I passed because it was a DC 10. I have 11. So the intelligence kicked in. Went, this is a reanimated corpse. So you can do a bunch of different things. So like I can just attack the zombie, or I can be like, sir, are you a member of the undead? I can try talking to him. If you see quotation marks, that is like you're saying that out loud to whoever it is you're in conversation with, or to anyone around you. If it doesn't have quotation marks, then you're internally thinking about it. So I could ask myself, what's he doing? And then all my different like things check in to be like, yeah, it's a zombie attempting to clear a path through the apple pile. Should I defeat the zombie? Strength is, of course, going to say yes, because it's a zombie, and it, you know, well, it's a reanimated corpse. Maybe not necessarily a zombie. Maybe, you know, we're in a different world here. Maybe that's not how that works. There's also the orange highlighted, what are they called? There's a word for them. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I first seen these in the Pathfinder games, which is very, very cool. I know it's older than that, though, which it gives you some contextual information about different things that are mentioned. So undead are not allowed here in Norvik. So you can click on that, and there will be a difficulty check to see if you can remember or like figure out what that was. And it gives you, you know, Norvik, your home city, founded by your god toward the end of the Coast War. And then you can click on the coast to see what all that's about. That's all cool. So what I'm going to do is, I've now shown you the dialogue. This is basically how it works. There are checks that you have to do sometimes where you have to roll against your different stats to see if you pass them. There is a system in this game for redoing those. It's not like Disco Elysium where you had to level up and then put a point in. In this game, you get like an item that lets you attempt to reroll. There are some that you can't do that with, and you have to go and rest first, I believe. That's one thing you can do in this as well, is you can do like a short rest to get maybe some of your spell slots back and to get rid of certain status effects. I haven't actually had to do that yet, so I'm not 100% sure on all the different things it has to do. But we can attack the zombie. So that puts us into combat mode. We get some bars come from the top and bottom. So encounters are turn-based conflicts where participants take turns in rolling dice and taking actions. Now, the really fun part about this is that it still happens through the lens of our different stats, like, talking to us, which is really, really cool. And I thought the first time I saw this was like, wow, you know, if Disco Elysium ever did have combat, this is exactly how it would have been done. So this is one of the parts of the game where I'm like, okay, this game saw what Disco Elysium did, and it wanted to do it in its D&D setting and have a ton of fun doing it, and they just knew what they were doing. So it's really cool. So first you do a dexterity check to get your initiative. So if you have bad dexterity, you're going to have to be expecting to be, you know, doing pretty bad on the initiative checks. But let's roll that. Rolled a 20. Couldn't ask for anything better. Rolled a 7. Beautiful. So obviously I go first. If there's more enemies in the fight, then obviously there might be more rolls going on. So we're in round 1. Strength says fight. Dexterity says you're quick, you got this, and then you get various options. I believe this is all going to be contextual based on like maybe what weapon you have, what enemy you're fighting, what position you're in, if you're casting a spell or not, you know, all sorts of different things. So I can do strength, I can shove him, I can do constitution, where I sort of try to tank the hit and see what the enemy does. Dexterity, I can try and like outwit the zombie and say, you know, try and trick it. So we'll do that one actually. That sounds funny enough. To try and trick it, pass the roll, and then like I said, you know, it still chimes in to be like, here, you know, here's what it did, and here it worked. Zombie turns his gaze towards your fist, and then you get the zombie to stumble backwards. And now even the fights have the same branching possibilities, it seems, as the dialogue does, and that's, I think, the biggest accomplishment of this combat system, is that it feels like the conversational system, but in a combat context. It's really, really cool. So we're in round 2 now, because I did an action, the zombie did an action. But our thoughts are still, like, talking to each other, so, like, you know, Charisma here is like, trying to chime in, being like, here, maybe we can do something else here, you know, maybe we can try and, like, manipulate the zombie. But we're gonna go strength here. We're gonna beat up the zombie. Rolled a 4, which is a failure. Brutal stuff. With a DC 6 too, but that's just the way it goes. And I have found that failure in this game, much like Disco Elysium, is sometimes just as fun as passing it. So zombie's gonna bite us. We take damage. 1d4. Health is down to 2. Actually, could have killed us there. I haven't died yet in the game, so I don't actually know what would happen. Finish this with a sucker punch. DC 12. That's kind of tough. Could die here, actually. Yeah, another 4. Knock him out. No. My fist cracks, and I've just died. Okay, well. Okay, you go into a death saving throw. That makes sense. So I resisted the death, but I got exhaustion. I have had that before. I believe it caps your health. And it is no longer hostile to me. So I basically failed the fight, essentially. The zombie kind of stopped fighting, and I'm on 1 HP, embarrassed after my inability to fight the zombie. So that was fun. So this is the example of how this game can go. Like, even with a decent like strength stat, you know, you're not guaranteed, and yeah, it's good. It's good. Like, if from what I've shown you here, you can, if you've played Disco Elysium, you know exactly what you're getting. Now, obviously, the big thing about this game is, as you may have noticed, there is no voice acting. This is a much lower budget game than Disco Elysium, and even Disco Elysium, it took years for it to get a voice acting update. The developer has said that in an ideal world, they would love to do voice acting, but to get it all perfect and the amount of lines that would need recorded, it would be a massive endeavor. Basically, this game would have to sell incredibly well to justify that change. So I would expect there to be no voice acting update to this game. Just given the size of it and stuff, I don't think this game will sell well enough to justify that voice acting overhaul to the game, just because how expensive that would be and the massive undertaking that would be. Not to say that I don't think this game isn't going to sell well, I just think it's outside the scope for this game, personally. Like, it was a shock that something like Disco Elysium got it. Like, you know, it's a crazy thing to expect, absolutely crazy thing to expect. It would be nice, don't get me wrong, it would be nice. They have said that they would like to get some voices done for some prominent roles, so like some of the bigger characters and more focused scenes, like maybe get some voice acting done for that. A bit how like more traditional CRPGs have done it, where 90% of the time you're not getting voice acting, but like very important characters or very important moments might get some voice acting, stuff like that, to really like add to the gravity of the situation. So maybe they'll get that. That would be cool. The game is also day-based, much like Disco Elysium. You can see in the bottom right, it's day 1. There's our short rest, so we can we could do that, do all that sort of stuff. But oh, I got a full heal, lovely stuff. But yeah, that is pretty much I would want to show you with this, because like I said, I don't want to show any more, because pretty much anything is going to be a spoiler in some way. I mean, like, that interaction with the zombie was already like a spoiler in some way, because it's not some little side thing. That this is the game. These interactions, these conversations, these bits of combat, figuring it all out, you know, piecing things together, that is the whole thing. So yeah, I don't want to show you any more. Hopefully you have hopefully you understand why I haven't shown too much more. Normally I would show a lot more gameplay than this, but spoilers beware and all that. But yeah, this game is really good. I've had a good time with it. I can't wait to just sort of... It's a very chill one. I like to just relax with this game. You know, go through all these different like wacky little scenarios, try and figure out, piece together what's going on, figure out who my character is, what kind of, you know... I keep going back and forward on what kind of stats I want to start with. You know, I already have an idea for like 3 or 4 more other like stat distribution for like fun character archetypes and stuff like that. There's a ton you could do, ton of replayability in this game, and the art style as well. I can't remember if I said about it earlier, but the art style is absolutely gorgeous. I think it's really, really nice to separate it and make it stand out. It's just very pleasant to look at. Yeah. I think that's all I really want to talk about with this one for today. Hopefully you have enjoyed the video. Hopefully you have seen everything you need to see about the game. And honestly, I would recommend picking this one up. I really would. I can't see this game flopping. I can't see this game, you know, shit in the bed like later. Obviously, this is the first impressions. I have not played the whole game, so I always like to give out that little sort of caveat. You know, make sure you check out other sources for the game as well, because, you know, after 30 hours, maybe the game falls apart, I don't know. But I can't see it happening with this one. Yeah, thank you very much for watching, everyone, and hope you have enjoyed. See you on the next one. Goodbye.